Hello, Tim, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7:01 here p.m. in Ghana, and I would like us to start with the session. So tonight, the Young Researchers Forum is hosting a visiting scholar who has been gracious to share his research with us. This is in the person of Dr. Tim Ziemer, who is visiting KNUST and is being hosted by Dr. Kingsley Bedu of the Department of Theoretical and Applied Biology. Dr. Ziemer will be talking to us about modeling mosquito hearing. But as custom demands for every official gathering of KNUST, we begin with a prayer and end with a prayer. So I would like to invite Dr. Kingsley Bedu, if he is available, to give us an opening prayer.
Okay, let us share a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to learn and to have some knowledge into some of your creation in order that we'll be able to live perfectly here. We pray that you grant us open-heartedness and swift, brilliant minds that would understand and will be able to apply for the betterment of our society. We thank you in the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Bedu. So without wasting much of your time, in the adverts that went out, a bio on Dr. Ziemer was given that he has a PhD from the University of Hamburg, and among other things. I wouldn't bore you with the details since that has already been advertised, and therefore we'll go straight to the point. My name is Marina Santo Nkansa. I chair or lead the Young Researchers Forum, and together with 7 other young faculty, we drive the young researchers of this university, working under the Office of Grants and Research, under the Office of the Vice Chancellor. So without further ado, Dr. Tim Ziemer, we are ready when you are ready. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm ready. I think I'm sharing my screen now. Can you all see it?
Yes, everything fine.
Perfect. Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to talk, there's the feedback. I would like to talk today about our mosquito antenna model. We have started modeling mosquito hearing in order to understand their courtship behavior a little better. Actually, yes, we have 2 models. I would focus on one of them, which is supposed to help us understand how mosquitoes identify each other and synchronize to each other during the mating, with a second one that is supposed to explain how mosquitoes can localize each other acoustically at all. Okay, first some observations about the sound of mosquitoes. You probably know already a lot more about mosquitoes than I do. This was a female mosquito, has a lower fundamental frequency. Can you see my pointer? So down here, it has a frequency of like 400 Hertz and some additional frequencies that are produced when they flap their wings, right? These are the wing beat sounds. And the male mosquito sounds like that, produces much higher frequencies. around 600 hertz and integer multiples of that. These are the overtones. But when they meet, when a male mosquito and an unfertilized female of the same species, when they meet, they start adjusting their frequencies. So both change their wing beat rates and try to synchronize. In this case, they synchronize not the fundamental frequency down here, but their overtones. They match. This overtone is around 1.2 kilohertz. So yeah, mosquitoes are amongst the best hearing insects. They can identify and recognize each other and also localize each other through hearing. And of course, they approach each other just by hearing and listening. They communicate by adjusting their flying tones, so their wing beat rates to one another. Males and females of the same species tend to synchronize at a 2 to 3 frequency ratio. So when the male produces 3 wing beats, the female produces exactly 2 wing beats within the same time, so that the overtones line up. 2 males of the same species do kind of the opposite. They try to diverge their frequencies, probably to make sure that they will not stay at the same place. Because when they have different frequencies, that means they will fly at different speeds or in different directions. That's how they also spatially diverge when their frequencies diverge. It has been observed that no courtship with resting or wingless females takes place. So the look, the smell, the pheromones, the touch, they certainly play a role in the mating process of mosquitoes, just as of other animals, but it does not seem to be sufficient. The acoustics plays an important role. But it has also been observed that copulation even takes place between a male mosquito and a loudspeaker if the loudspeaker plays the right, I call it sexy, the right sexy frequency. So acoustical attraction can be sufficient for mosquitoes for mating. Here is now what is happening when they synchronize. The red peaks are the frequencies produced by the female mosquito, and the blue peaks are the frequencies produced by the male mosquito. And they start out just somewhere at different frequencies, but then they will synchronize to each other like that. Yeah. And as you could see and hear, the male is doing the majority of the work, reducing the frequency a lot, and the female is also just slightly, but also increasing the frequency so that they match at the frequency, a common frequency of around 1.2 kilohertz. And this has been advertised, so to say, by researchers as the love songs of mosquitoes, and it was just assumed that their aim for mating is to match their frequency up here, to synchronize on that frequency. But there is a big open question, and this question is, how do they do that? Because what's so special is that they cannot really hear frequencies up here. These are too high. These are like, I don't know, we cannot hear the sounds that bats make when they hunt, right? Ultrasound. And to mosquitoes, this frequency at which they synchronize, this is an ultrasound for them. They cannot hear it. Their auditory neurons only respond to frequencies below around 500 hertz, so only frequencies down here. What does that mean? That means that, for example, male mosquitoes are practically inaudible to other mosquitoes, both to males and females. They produce only high frequencies up here and no frequencies down here. Only the female produces one frequency down here that is directly audible, directly encoded through the auditory neurons of the mosquitoes. So how can that be? It seems magical. How do they manage to synchronize at such a high frequency? Yeah. There has been an observation made, which is that mosquitoes manage to synchronize only when both are flying. So when either of them is still, the other one won't respond. Only when two mosquitoes are flying, they communicate acoustically with each other. And the male mosquito is inaudible to a female as long as the female is standing still. But when the female starts moving, they both match their frequencies. So an unknown mechanism makes the inaudible audible during a duet, so while both are flying. That means that some unknown nonlinear mechanisms between the external sound, so the other mosquito, and the internal sound, so the mosquito sound that is produced by the other mosquito, together they produce new frequencies, inaudible frequencies, frequencies that need to lie somewhere down here below 500 hertz. They are not present. Can you see my pointer? Could you please repeat that?
Yes, we can see your pointer. I am.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see it.
All right. So frequencies down here must be produced. They are not measurable outside of the mosquito. They are just produced inside the mosquito itself, right? So with a microphone, you cannot record it. It has to be produced by some mechanisms somewhere in the mosquito itself. These nonlinearities are, for example, harmonic distortions that have been observed. They have been measured. They put sensors inside the Johnston's organ of the mosquito and then produce frequencies, acoustic frequencies, and measure how the Johnston's organ responds. And it has been found that it only responds to frequencies below 500 hertz. However, it does produce harmonic distortion, so the neural response also contains higher frequencies. And the number and the intensity of these higher frequencies is dependent on the location, where inside the Johnston's organ you are looking at. And they also depend on the intensity of the input signal, so how loud this sound source is. And then antiphase responses have been observed, so that some neurons will fire exactly when the others are pausing and the other way around. So they will respond in antiphase. Different neurons at different locations will respond in antiphase. And now here it's really interesting. The difference frequency between the male and the female is also encoded. For example, what is happening here? Has someone just forgotten to mute the microphone?
I was saying that we went to.
Hello, Victor, can you mute, please?
Very, very upset. I haven't seen anything like before. Even on political platforms, we don't do this. We don't.
Maybe
Can I just keep talking?
Prof. My respect, can you please mute everyone?
Well, okay, yeah, and then
Shall I just keep talking?
Victor, please mute.
Always shouting.
Victor and Kofi Yankson, please mute.
The host or the co-host could mute the people.
Yes. Aha. All right. Yes, I just found the right button to mute people. All right. Okay, so the difference frequency between female and male mosquito is also represented in the neural response inside the Johnston's organ so the hearing organ of the mosquito. So if I have one female with 400 hertz and a male with 600, the response will contain a 200 hertz frequency, and that's an audible frequency. Right? And this is, of course, something that they are probably responding to. The question is just, where does it come from? And also the difference frequency near the synchronization frequency, when they try to synchronize at 1.2 kilohertz, but they are not there yet. They may have a frequency of 1.2 kilohertz and the other one like 1240 hertz. There is a 40 hertz difference, and this 40 hertz are also represented inside the Johnston's organ. So the neurons encode that. The question is, how do they get this information? Where does it come from? I think I don't have to tell you much about mosquito hearing. They can hear through their antennae. They do not have eardrums, so they do not, they are not sensitive to pressure fluctuations, but to particle motions, which deflect the flagellum, so the outside part, the visible part of the antenna. You probably also know that they have fibrillae, the hairs, especially the males have very many and very large hairs that probably help them to be sensitive to air motions that also deflect their antennae. And down at the base here, where we have the pedicel, inside that pedicel, this stiff part, the flagellum, turns into a curved part, which is surrounded by the pedicel, which contains the Johnston's organ. And somehow there are attachment cells that get stretched from the motion of the antenna. And this stretch and compression of these attachment cells opens the channels for the neurons to fire. And this neural firing is, so to say, the encoding of the outside sound to the brain, to the hearing organ of the mosquito. The question is, where do these nonlinearities come from? Maybe it is the flagellum that produces new frequencies through some nonlinear mechanisms. Maybe it's the neurons themselves. They certainly also produce nonlinearities. This has been observed in many species and animals. Or maybe it's the fibrillae. No one really knows. There has been a previous model where the flagellum has been modeled, and this curved part down here, the curved septa, this has been simplified just as a line like that. So we have a liver. This liver will then stretch and compress these attachment cells, right? But this is a linear process. And what this model then adds is neurons in terms of a leaky condensator mechanism. So leaky integrate and fire mechanism. And that's a typical thing. And with this, you can produce a hysteresis, which means that depending on where you're coming from, the neural firing will happen or will not happen, which explains some of the observations that have been made inside the Johnston's organ. Another model was a finite element model of the flagellum, because the flagellum has many different parts and they have different boundary conditions, and people have tried to model that. But they've realized again that this is mostly a linear process that amplifies and attenuates different frequencies. So some frequencies become much louder, much stronger through this segmentation. Others are not as loud anymore. So they are, some are amplified and the others are attenuated. But this is still not non-linearity. So it does not produce new frequencies. Our model tries to find the root of these new frequencies, and it is focusing on the antenna base, so the part down here. where we have the motile part of the antenna moving. It's deflected from the sound, and this motion then lets the curved scepter down here rotate around this main axis. And this rotation then stretches and compresses the attachment cells. I think I have an animation of that. Yeah, like this. Okay. And this left-right motion then produces a rotation in the curved scepter, and this rotation produces a stretch and compression of the attachment cells. This process, however, is highly nonlinear. As you can see, can you see it? This stretch and compression is not proportional to the deflection of the antenna. It's location dependent, so it's different for every location along the scepter. So our hypothesis is that the nonlinear transformation from the deflection over the rotation to the stretch and compression produces all the nonlinearities, including the low frequency content, the new low frequency content that enables mosquitoes to hear each other and communicate with each other. So the previous model that has existed made this simplification to model the scepter as plane and not as curved. And I think that's the main reason why it did not produce any nonlinearities. This was an oversimplification, and our model does not do much more than sticking more closely to the natural morphology of the antenna, keeping the curved part curved, and this seems to explain everything. So when we input a single frequency to our antenna model, the output looks like that. So in orange you can see one single frequency, and then the blue lines are the output at one prong, so at one location along the curved scepter, so at one population of neurons, you could say, right? And as you can see, even though we only add one frequency to the system, very many frequencies come out, and these are harmonic distortions, right? And their distribution depends on the location here along the scepter. So at different prongs, at different neurons, they will look different, these distortions. And also the amplitude of the input signal plays a role, which already explains very many of these nonlinearities that have been observed through measurements. What you can also see is that at different prongs, the response is exactly antiphase, which is, again, an observation that has already been made in real mosquitoes when you put a sensor inside their Johnson's organ. And now, more importantly, is the low frequency component. As we entered just one frequency, all the nonlinearities only produced higher frequencies. But that doesn't help because mosquitoes cannot hear them, right? They need lower frequencies in order to really hear it and to respond to it. But in this case, we added two frequencies to our model, one at 1.2 kilohertz and the other at 1.24 kilohertz. So just a difference of 40 hertz. These are these two orange peaks. And the output looks pretty much as before. So we see the two input frequencies plus the harmonic distortion components up here. But in this case, we also see one new peak, which is down here in the low frequency region. And when we zoom in, we can see that it is exactly at 40 hertz, exactly the difference between the two frequencies that we have added to the system. Right? Plus, nonlinear harmonics of this thing, they are, however, not very strong in comparison to the one main peak. So the difference frequency near the synchronization frequency is encoded with our model. And now if we model two virtual mosquitoes, in red we have the female mosquito, just 3 frequencies. And in green, we have the male mosquito, also 3 frequencies. The output contains the exact same frequencies. So these 6 frequencies are still preserved, but very many additional frequencies are produced. For example, these nonlinear harmonics up here, the harmonic distortion products, but also the 3 frequencies down here. Yeah, and if you look closer, you will see that these low frequencies are exactly the differences between the frequencies up here and this frequency pair down here, and between the fundamental frequency of both animals. These are the 3 peaks down here, which are perfectly audible to them, right? And when they successfully synchronized, so when they match frequencies at 1.2 kilohertz up here, what is left is a single strong peak in the low frequency region. And there's a reason to believe that mosquitoes that are very sensitive to frequencies in this exact frequency region are so sensitive to these frequencies, not because other mosquitoes produce these frequencies. Obviously, they don't. Why are they so sensitive to frequencies down here? Probably because they are produced as soon as they manage to synchronize to each other. During the mating process, they produce low frequencies that help them for mating. Yeah. So the difference frequency between female and male fundamental frequencies also encoded. We've also tried that with real mosquito recordings. These are very noisy, so that's why it looks a little noisy up here. But again, in orange, you see the 5 frequencies from two different mosquitoes. And down here, you see 3 low frequency peaks, and these are the difference frequencies between the fundamental frequencies and the difference frequencies between the higher harmonics. So we can conclude that our antenna model produces really all the observed nonlinearities that can be found in the Johnson's organ, so in the neural response of mosquitoes to an outside sound source. I think this proves our hypothesis that the nonlinear transformation from the deflection of the flagellum over the rotation of the curved septa to the stretch and compression of the attachment cells produces the nonlinearities that enable mosquitoes to identify each other's species and sex, and also that help them also to do the mating, right? To synchronize. So what do we learn from that? I think entomologists should focus more on the antenna base, on what is happening in this curved septa part, not only on the flagellum and on the neural side, but also on this mechanism down there. And I think to understand what attracts mosquitoes, we also have been looking at the wrong frequencies so far, because the story is, yes, they match their frequencies at 1.2 kilohertz, and this is always called a duet and a love song. But what is interesting for the mosquitoes is not the frequency up here that we are always observing and looking at. It is other frequencies down here that are not recordable. They are produced through the morphology of the mosquito antenna. And our model hopefully helps us to illuminate how the signals look like when they are communicating, and what is their objective, so to say. Do they want to have one certain peak at one certain frequency, or are they looking for the right spread of low frequencies? We don't know yet, but the model will certainly help us. But of course, only if we have recordings of mosquito communications. And that's why I'm here, right? I hope that we will do it tonight. We will carry out recordings of mosquitoes, hopefully while they are communicating. The time of mosquito communication is short, so to say. Only unfertilized females are very attractive to the males. And I think that's where the mating, the majority of the communication takes place. So it's difficult. We have to catch this short moment, so to say. Yes. Are there more applicabilities? I think this is fundamental research, but I think applicability is there. So far, for example, Cato and her colleagues managed to communicate with mosquitoes in their experiments. 22 to 39% of all males and between 30 and 35% of all females approached and synchronized to artificially generated sounds. And I think if we understand acoustic communication better and understand acoustic attraction better, we may increase this value, right? I think because communication is interactive, and so far we've only been playing a single sound to a mosquito, and then the other mosquito responds, but there is no interaction because this one is just stationary and the other mosquito is doing the job, right? But that's not how communication works. In order to understand how it works, we have to look closer at how real mosquitoes do it and then try to develop an interactive system where we produce sounds, but not just a static sound, but a sound in response to the sound of the other mosquito. And this hopefully helps us to attract a mosquito, for example, for attracting it and luring it into a trap, or the other way around. Maybe it's also possible to dispel them if we understand what they really dislike. Yes, that's of course also helpful if we can attract them into traps or dispel them. Do we have time? Shall I keep talking about our second one? I will just go quickly through it. We've also asked ourselves, why do mosquitoes have two antennae? And the answer is probably the same why humans and most animals have two ears. It's for localizing sound sources, so for spatial hearing mostly. Not exclusively, but mostly. And if you look at an antenna, it will be, it's like a lever. So when you push and pull, when a sound wave comes from the side, it can easily push and pull the antenna back and forth with all the force acting like to the right side. However, when you come from the wrong angle, the sound wave will hardly deflect the antenna, right? So there is a location-dependent force. The deflection is location-dependent. And of course, if we have now two antennae, this location dependency will not be symmetrical anymore, right? Because we are now having one incoming sound from one angle, but it will have different angles to the two antennae. And we have tried to look, just by plotting the deflection of the left over the right antenna, how this would look like if the two antennae were just parallel, like that. And it turns out that no matter where the sound is coming from, the deflection is practically always the same for both antennae. If they were 90% spread, 90 degrees spread, like orthogonal, this looks perfect at the first glance. So for every single incidence angle, there's now an obvious pattern of motion between the two antennae, which seems perfect, but it is not. If we think of humans, humans can localize sound sources in the front much better than sound sources on the sides, actually by several orders of magnitude. And when we look at the pattern when we have the two antennae at a spread of 60 degrees, and this is the actual angle between the mosquito antennae, it looks like that. You can see the difference here. Everything is equally spread. But at this 60 degrees, we have a huge spread between sound sources in the front, but all the sound sources from the sides are practically the same, which is, so to say, the best compromise between this very bad resolution of parallel antennae and this seemingly perfect or equally distribution with 90 degrees. Yes, this has been found not only for high frequencies like that, but also for the low frequency components. So when we combine our both models, we can see that this is helping mosquitoes localize each other. That's what I was, that's what I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much, Kingsley Badu and Omu Maiga Ascofade. I am so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Yes, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for letting me use your lab to carry out recordings. I'm super happy that you invited me over to Ghana. And of course, a big thank also to all my colleagues who have been working on that mosquito model with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you deserve an applause. This is really interesting, very interesting study. Trying to get into the mind of the mosquito to understand how they communicate with each other, so we may be able to exploit or manipulate to control for the betterment of our lives. We've been trying to control mosquito for centuries. And whatever you do, they also try to do something different. If you put a mosquito net there, they bite outside. If you put chemicals, they become resistant to the chemicals. So learning how to understand how they talk to each other and to control will be very, very great. So thank you very much for the talk. We will allow questions. But before, I don't know, Prof. I've seen Professor Alex Debra. I've also seen Professor Zoge Kem. And of course, it's not easy to identify everyone based on their names here. But either, if Prof. Marian has something to say, if Zoge Kem, I see his camera is on, and if Prof. Alex Debra has some questions or comments, we'll be happy to listen to the three of you before perhaps we open the we allow all other questions. I see Prof. Marian has yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bedu. I would like to say a very big thank you to Zim for choosing us and you as well, Dr. Bedu, for choosing Guyana Researchers Forum as co-host for this event. It's definitely an eye-opener, and I'm hoping that this conversation is going to open up collaborations beyond your disciplines, because I see a lot of linkages, potential linkages with other disciplines. So thank you very much for choosing us for this presentation. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful, yeah, very wonderful. Now, Prof. Alex Debra, your hand is up. Kindly go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because you asked me to say something, I will say something. Yeah, Dr. Ziemer, thank you very much. I think your presentation is very insightful and interesting. I have one small question. Mosquito attractants are made based on many things. Some are based on sound, others light, others scents, etc. So which of these attract mosquitoes most, so that if I'm going to buy mosquito attractant or whatever, I know which one to settle on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, biology, right? Animals have all these senses and they will use them. And of course, it's the same with people. So many people would say that they are attracted to what they see, but trust me, if you see a person that looks super beautiful, but you cannot stand his or her voice, this will make this person probably a little less attractive to you, right? So all these things matter. I think you cannot say that there is just this one thing. Pheromones play a role. If you understand it, if you do it, if you consciously think about it, probably not, right? You do not consciously smell pheromones, right? But it seems to play a huge role. So yes, all these things do play a role, and we certainly need to combine them. And we already know that we can attract mosquitoes, for example, through carbon dioxide, right? So which simulates our breath, and certain colors attract them. This is just not my expertise. My expertise is sound. But of course, it would be great if we could combine the knowledge, right?
Thank you very much.
What is your background? Are you
Yeah.
dealing with pheromones, for example? Or-
No, I'm a biologist. I'm a microbiologist.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Zege, I think
Yeah.
I see you to speak. Yeah.
Yes, I also want to applaud Tim and Kingsley for this coming together and for the presentation. I think it is an enormous how much we can learn if you bring things together. Just based on that, independent on the mosquitoes, I think the story which Tim told us shows us how essential it is to bring together different expertise, and I'm curious for the other expertise. So in response to Alex's questions, what to buy, I would say to buy an acoustic responsive device following Tim's observations, which basically attracts every single female mosquito into the trap. I wish you all the best for the collaboration. I'm sure that this will drive us the beginning of a very productive phase. Thank you very much, all of you.
Yes, thank you, Sergey. Good to see you, by the way.
Yeah. Dr. Umu Maiga, please say something.
Yes, good evening. I think it was a very interesting talk. Since Kingsley asked or talk about the mosquito song, I was very interesting, and thinking about quite a number of experiments we can do in the lab and try to understand better the mosquitoes, as it's very key to control malaria. I'm also very excited with the testing that is ongoing now at KCCR, and just looking forward to see more about it. I just was very, I like the presentation and understand actually that it's not only about a recording, but there's much more going on to be able to understand why those differences are existing and how it can be applicable for medical use. So yeah, again, looking forward for more. Thank you, Tim and Kingsley, for that.
Thank you, Umu, for letting me do this.
Thank you. Thank you for. Yeah. So
and there's also a question in the chat.
We have about 10 minutes to go. Yeah. Yes. There's a question in the chat from Lucy. Lucy saying that my name is Lucy from Entomology University. I would like to ask if this model can be used in the near future for measuring infectious female mosquitoes and their behavior in terms of sound production.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes, this model is there, and we want to use it.
We are about to find out.
Exactly. Tonight will be the first night where we want to measure not only the single mosquitoes, but mosquitoes that are communicating. As far as I've heard, there is just really a small amount of time that we have, because as soon as the mating is done, then the female is not very attractive anymore for the males, right? And the communication, they communicate much less, and they will not synchronize anymore. They will not, no more mating will happen if it has happened already. So you have to, you only have a small phase in their lifetimes where they are really communicating and synchronizing like that, and that we want to investigate. And of course, yes, we can also use the model to investigate how infectious females maybe respond differently, how they sound differently, how they respond differently compared to others, how fertilized maybe sound different and respond different from unfertilized females, and so on and so forth. We don't know yet, and we need to investigate that.
Okay, so we also advertise this on the Ghana Entomological Society of Ghana. If anyone is from the Entomological Society of Ghana and has a question, as soon as Zoge is done, come in and ask your question. We don't want to take a lot of your time. We want to maybe finish by 8. So Zoge, please go ahead.
Thank you for letting me continue with the question. So I think for the previous question, because it's exactly what we wanted to study, where the idea for this mosquito song meeting originally came from, how to study. But with Tim's results now, of course, the question will be quite different and much more directed, possibly, as Tim just said, how to find out whether they react to different frequencies or changes to frequencies, how they will respond. So it will become much more exciting, but much more complex, because I think, have you have any ideas already how to stimulate, or maybe your model will help to stimulate what frequencies might be able to trigger signals in the base of the antenna, which apparently seems to be the key.
Yes, tonight we want to measure males and unfertilized females together. And hopefully we will then be able to record how that sounds, how both sound, right? How both change their frequencies in correspondence to each other. And that's the first thing to do. If we see a pattern, we will now, our antenna model produces a new pattern, a low frequency pattern, right? And but so far we do not know exactly how it looks like and how it changes over time. That's the first step. That's what we want to measure today with real mosquitoes in the real mating process. And I don't know if we will be able to catch that, right? So I hopefully we will get it on tape, so to say, right? Yeah, and if so, then the next measurements have to be carried out. For example, with fertilized females, how do they respond differently, or why don't they respond, or why don't the males respond to them anymore, right? Or what if for example, if the mosquito is already blood fed, how does that change the sound? There are so many things that we should observe, but it takes time. First of all, first step is to get the status quo, so to say, to get them in action and see how it looks like in the healthiest way, so to say. Then we can see how they react differently under different conditions. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, of course, we'll keep working on it. If we don't get it tonight, we'll continue. We'll have the instruments. We'll continue to do the recording until we find something significant, until we do our best to understand. Yeah, we have a time for maybe one more question. I see Petra is also listening. I see a lot of people I know, Amalabi, in Charlotte, a lot also from our group, Thomas and others. We have time at least for one more question. If anybody wants to ask one more question, we'll be happy to listen to. If anyone is from the Entomological Society of Ghana and has a question, we'll be happy to take them. Yeah. Umu, please.
Yes, it's maybe out of curiosity because, okay, I understand that the song is playing maybe a role into mating of mosquitoes, female and male, but is there a way that it's possible that it's also playing a role in attractiveness to humans or any animals? I don't know if you have thought about it, and if yes, in which way? Because I think this is also, from my point of view, what is of interest is to see not only how they should not reproduce, because mosquitoes are necessary in the natural life, but also how to stop them maybe transmitting malaria, for example, or other diseases.
Yes, maybe we can find a way to produce an acoustic repellent, right? Something, if it sounds like a predator, they might try to flee, right, to escape. But as far as I've heard, I've just read it in the literature. They do not, for example, try to escape from the sound of a dragonfly, even though dragonflies are predators to them, or at least to the larvae, I think, right, not to the grown mosquito. But that doesn't seem to help. They don't care, so to say. That's what I've read, but I don't know. Maybe we can try it out as well. Maybe we can find a sound that they try to avoid. This sound could be the sound of a bee, or I don't know what predators are there, what animals are there. Of course, birds, but I don't know if they try to escape from bird songs, from bird calls. Right? They are, of course, everywhere.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting
Thank you.
me. Thanks for the questions and the nice talks and conversations about it. And of course, thanks for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We hope that we'll continue with this and many other collaborations to come. We're also very grateful to the Young Researchers Forum, the lead Professor Marian Asantuan Kansa, for organizing this for us. Of course, we are happy that every one of you also made time in the evening to come and listen to this program. We will keep you updated. Whatever we find, we'll share the information for all of us to come to the point of understanding. Maybe we'll invite Professor Marian to give us closing remarks and close us.
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I, on behalf of the Young Researchers Forum team and then the Director of the Office and Grants and Research, would like to say a very big thank you once again to Tim and to all you participants who made time to join us. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, good night.